just want to start the video today talking about the advantages of living in suburbia, not as opposed to living anywhere else, but just the advantages that I find living in suburbia. Now you can see by the view behind me, I'm sitting here at one of the local ferry terminals in the parking area. Behind me is a view of the Auckland Harbour Bridge heading over towards the city, and we're here on the North Shore, of course, so this is why you can see the water and the boats and everything in the background. And this is one of the reasons why I love living where I do here in Auckland, and it is in suburbia. It's in the middle of, not far away from anything really. So one of the things that I really do enjoy is the fact that I can come down here, sit beside the water and take a video. I'm doing it in the car today because it's very, very windy. And because of that, it would make a bit of a noise on my microphone, and I don't really want that to come through. But in the end, I will turn the camera around and get a shot of the view of the ferry terminal and across from here. Maybe I'll get outside the car and do that rather than sitting in here, but it's just easier to talk in here. Now, when I was a kid, I was raised on a farm. I loved it. Mum and Dad used to milk cows. It was very rural, and I went to a small rural school. We had, I think, about 96 kids at the school, and that went right up until you went to high school. So it was from when you first started school up into high school. Then to go to high school, we would have had to have bussed into the nearest city to go to a high school. Now, we didn't stay there that long. I think I was 9 when we left the farm, and we went further down south of the North Island, and we moved into a small town, which at the time I thought was huge. I think we had a population of probably 12 to 1,500 people. Went to the school, had 400 kids. I thought it was just huge. And we were living in town, and I thought that was just the ideal thing. Because the town was so small, it wasn't very far to get on your bike and head off out into the country and have all the enjoyment of the creek that we could swim in and paddocks that we could roam around. We had the railway lines going through the town, so my girlfriend and I, we would go out onto the railway tracks and we could walk along, and there was blackberries growing all along the side of the train tracks. And we would go along there and we would pick all these blackberries, and we had blackberries coming out of our ears. And at one stage I decided it was going to be a good way to make a few extra dollars, so I would go out on my own and I would pick a whole lot of blackberries, and then I'd go around all the local older ladies in town and ask them if they'd like to buy some blackberries so they could make some jam. And that worked quite well, lovely wild blackberries, and it was a little bit of pocket money. I had a few little side hustles going. At one stage you could collect beer bottles, which was what are they, about 1.2 litre or something like that. That was how the bottles of beer came in a dozen. And so you go around and collect all the beer bottles and bag them all up and take them down to the local hotel round the back there and cash them in. They would get a penny each for them, which is now 1 cent, but at that stage we were in LSD currency rather than decimal like we are now. But we'd get a penny each for them, and that was another little side hustle that my girlfriend and I had to get a few extra dollars. We used to also do babysitting. Now this is probably quite surprising. I used to babysit when I was 12, 13, 14, and that was up until I went to college and before I went to college or high school. But it was okay to go and babysit at that age. Now you can't even leave your children on their own until they reach 14. But we used to quite happily go off and babysit. People trusted us with their kids. We were all known around the town, so I guess trust was a big thing in those days. So yeah, we'd go out and do a bit of babysitting and get a bit of extra pocket money. So there was always a way even in a small town like that, to have a bit of a side hustle and get a few, a few pennies or a few shillings in the bank if we wanted to. Once I'd got married in that small town, I married a guy from the small town and had my 2 children down there, my 2 girls, and then we moved up to quite a bit further north, up to a place that was only about a 5-minute drive to the beach. Now, the place that we lived in before I moved up to the beach, it was inland, and it was always probably an hour and a half or so before you could get to a beach. And here, that's a long time. To some people, an hour and a half drive might not seem very much, but when you live in a small country like New Zealand, especially where there's beach and coastline all around it, an hour and a half seems quite a long time to drive to get to a beach. So when my husband and I moved, we moved further north, quite a bit further north, into an area where there was a local beach. And I just loved being at the beach because it was one of those things that I'd always missed as a kid. Mum and Dad would take us to the beach. We would go fishing, and every time we'd go camping, it was always to the beach. Mum and Dad would fish a lot, getting whitebait and snapper and all that sort of thing. So we did spend a lot of time at the beach, but I just felt really sad when we had to go back home. We were inland, and it would be probably another 6 to 12 months or so before we'd get back to the beach. But once I started living at the beach, it was so totally different. And I promised myself at that stage that I would always live by the sea. I used to love going hunting for shellfish on the beach. We had lovely beaches there. We would go fishing and swimming and all the thing. And this is when I was young, and my husband, we'd take the kids to the beach, and always promised myself that whatever happened, I would live at the beach. And after a few years, we ended up buying a little business further along the coast towards another city, but we were still on the same coastline. And we bought a little dairy, a 7-day dairy, had petrol pumps, and that was right on the beach. And that was just amazing. So we had that for a few years before we get that sold. We moved into the township itself, into the city itself, which was right on the coast. So I'd always had this desire to live by the beach, and I was living my dream, having access to the ocean whenever I wanted to. I took a little bit of time out. I had to go and work for 6 months inland in another city, but I had this desire. Now I wanted to get back, and I wanted to get back to the beach again. So we moved back over to the beach and into the city that was on the coast. Had the ocean there, and it was always lovely. And I never ever had any desire to move away from there. But life being as it is, it has its little ups and downs, and the marriage came apart, and I'd decided I had a contract to work overseas for a few months, which turned into 2.5 years, and that was okay. When I came back, I went off to university, and the university was right in the middle of the country again. It was inland, and I thought, oh gosh, when I got my degree, I thought, no, I don't want to stay inland. By this time, my kids were grown up. They were, teenagers, plus they'd left home. So I thought, right, to get the work I needed to move either down to Wellington, which was the capital city, or up to Auckland, which is the largest city in New Zealand. It's the furthest north of the 2 cities. Even though it's the largest, it's only got a population of just over 1 point something million. But when you've only got a population of the country of only 5 million, it's quite big in comparison with the rest of the country. So I moved up to Auckland, and one of the biggest attractions, of course, was being the closeness to the ocean. And as you can see, this is the inner harbour behind me. If you go underneath that bridge and keep on going, you're out into the ocean. And all of this area where I live around here has got inner harbour all around it. So at any point within, even I can stand out on the road outside my place, look across the street between the two houses, and I'm looking straight down into the inner harbour. I take the dogs to the park, where the park is. There's one particular place that we like to go, and it looks straight down into the inner harbour. And I just have this thing about being close to the ocean, but I don't want to be away from all the conveniences. And so that meant living in a city. And living in Auckland, I know people say, oh God, they'd never live up here. It's, concrete jungle and all of that sort of carry on. But it's not really. It's what you make of it. I love the city. I love the convenience of being close to everything that I need. If I'm doing a bit of odd jobs around the house, it's very easy just to get 5 minutes down to the hardware, the big box store to get what I need down there. Cafes all around the place. I can go and get a coffee whenever I want to. And the advantage also is that being in a city like this, and with me having a history of having heart problems back 12 odd years ago, it's nice to know that the hospital is close. And it's not that I've got anything against living out in the country. I would love to be able to live in the country as long as that countryside was close to the beach. And it's a pretty hard ask to be able to come up with that scenario, and also to having access to a hospital. So what I've decided on is that I do like it here in Auckland. It's got some beautiful parks, it's got some beautiful scenery, you're always close to the water. Suburbia is really, here it is very green. I'm not quite so sure if they still do now, but here on the North Shore, the council used to have very strict rules on cutting trees, which trees that you could cut, how much you could cut off them per year. There was a certain percentage of that tree that you were only able to prune a certain amount per year without council approval doing more. Unless, of course, the tree was dangerous, which does happen. Trees rot, they get a bit susceptible to wind, and you were always able to take those away. But the history of having a very, very green city, Auckland is green all over. It doesn't matter where you go. There's no concrete jungle here at all. And I think people's perception that don't live here and have never lived here, especially small town folk, they have this idea that it's just all rush and bustle and it's just too much to cope with. Okay, the roads are busy. You've got traffic lights which control the traffic. You've got rush hour times, and you've got times when, there's other times if it's not rush hour after work, there'll be peak traffic times. But you learn to live with those and you learn to work around those. But it doesn't have any effect on me as making the place less desirable to live. I've sort of got mixed feelings about this because I'm very much an animal lover. And I would love to be out in the country and have horses and a goat and some sheep and all that sort of stuff. And probably, had my life taken a different path, I might have opted for that rather than the path that I took. But I would have always made sure that wherever I was, it wasn't too far away from the coastline. And it's a funny thing because I've said to my kids too that when I sort of pop my clogs and I'm no longer here, that I want to be cremated and my ashes are to go into the ocean, just off the beach, off the shore. There's several places that I would like it to be, but I have this feeling of freedom. Freedom, the air, the birds are free, the wind is free, the sun is free, everything that we have and enjoy is free. And I don't mean sort of at no cost, but it's got easy access to. And we have freedom of access to all the beautiful things that you could ever want in life, being here living in a city. So to me, suburbia isn't that horrible place where, you know, you don't want to go and live because it's a concrete jungle. To me, it's a lovely place. It's like every little suburb is like having your own little township. But however, if you want to get something that you need that wouldn't be available in a township, then you're in a city and everything's available. As far as neighbours are concerned, I've got lovely neighbours. I've been where I am now for about 20 odd years. The neighbours on one side have been there probably for 12, 13 years. So I've seen their little kids go from babies to pre-teens and just up to almost teens. They're very nice neighbours. Don't have a huge amount to do with them, but they're always there past the time of day. If I get a bit of spare fruit, I'll hand it over to them. But that's just the way that we are in the area. And the neighbours on the other side, they're just a young couple with a young baby. Baby's a toddler now. They're really nice, always past the time of day. People across the road, down a right of way beside me. You get to know everybody, but you're not on everyone's doorstep. You know people are there. You know what people do, and if you suddenly think, oh gosh, I must go and ask so-and-so such and such a thing, you always know who you can ask. The sad thing is one of the neighbours passed away about 10 days ago. He was a lovely old guy. He used to walk up and down the hill, the driveway of his property with his dogs, and then the dog got too old and they died, and then he got quite incapacitated. And in the end, he passed away about 10 days ago. And that was really sad. But you feel the same emotions that you do if you've got neighbours when you're living in a small town. And you've got your own community. You build community. People are all tolerant of each other. We know by sight who all our neighbours are. And it's very similar to if you were living just in a small town out in the country, a little area. You get to know everybody, and it's the same here. If you settle into an area and you've been here for quite some time, you get to know who all the neighbours are, and it becomes your little community. So as far as, you know, living in suburbia, I know some people say, oh God, I couldn't do that. I've got a son-in-law that tells me he would hate to live in the city. And I can understand that. He's very outdoorsy, very hands-on, always working, and he loves having his little patch of land out in the countryside. So I can understand people that are like that. But I guess probably at my age now, I've just sort of accepted the fact that I am a suburbanite and I enjoy it, and gives me everything that I need and everything that I want. So I hope this is probably, you know, people that have thought that they'd never like to live in a city, given them a bit of insight into what it can be like. It's really all about what you've made it. And that's really what we've got here. So on that note, I will leave it, and hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, if you would like to leave a like, have a comment, let me know what you think about living in the city, or whether you would rather live out in the country without all the hustle and bustle of neighbours and traffic and things like that. I'm interested to hear what your opinions are. So yes, and if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, that would be great as well. Okay, until next time, see you later. Bye.